Today, we'll be looking at a case from the starting era of the 20th century, so sit back as we go to Canada. It was a period often associated with growth and opportunity, but for one family living in rural Quebec, life was far more modest. Maria Aurore Lucina Gagnon was born on the 31st of May 1909 in Saint-Philomene de Fortierville, a small village situated near the St. Lawrence River, approximately 90 kilometers from the city of Quebec. She was the second of 5 children born to Telesphore Gagnon and his wife Marie-Anne Caron. At the time of Aurore's birth, the Canadian economy was expanding rapidly. The farming industry was experiencing a significant increase in production, and it was considered vital to the country's development. During the first part of the 20th century, the government actively encouraged people from European nations to immigrate to Canada, not only to work on farms, but also to clear land and help build roads and railways. Despite these broader changes taking place across the country, Aurore's family lived a simple life. Their house was small, and daily responsibilities were clearly divided. Her mother remained at home, caring for Aurore and her brothers and sisters, while her father worked to support the family. Telesphore Gagnon usually left the house very early in the morning and did not return until late in the evening, meaning that much of the responsibility for the children fell to their mother. She cared for them throughout the day and managed the household while their father was away at work. By the year 1916, the Gagnon family consisted of Telesphore Gagnon, his wife Marie-Anne, and their 5 children. The eldest was Marie-Jeanne, who was 9 years old. Aurore was 7, Lucina was 4, Georges was 3, and the youngest child, Joseph, was only 1 year old. At this point, life within the household was stable and predictable, and the children depended almost entirely on their mother's constant presence and care. However, the children's lives soon changed when Aurore's mother, Marie-Anne Caron, was diagnosed with tuberculosis. At the time, tuberculosis was a disease that had already claimed the lives of an estimated quarter of the adult population of Europe during the 19th century, and even by 1916, despite medical advancements, the outcome for those who contracted it was still very often death. Due to the severity of her condition, she was sent to a hospital in the city of Quebec to receive treatment. With his wife now gone from the home, Aurore's father was left alone to care for his 5 young children, something he found extremely difficult to manage. For a period of time, the children were sent to live with their grandparents who resided in Sainte-Sophie-de-Livrard, a village located approximately 10 kilometers away. This arrangement was intended to provide stability while her mother remained hospitalized, but it marked the first time when she was absent from her house for so long that it disrupted the family's daily life and routine.
After a time, the children returned to their home, following their father's decision to bring another woman into the household. Her name was Marie-Anne Hood, and she was the widow of Telesphore Gagnon's cousin. Marie-Anne Hood moved into the house with 2 young boys of her own, named Gerard and Henri Georges. Upon her arrival, she stated that she was keen to take care of the family home and to look after the children. However, there were people in the village who treated her with suspicion. It was known among local residents that her 2 daughters had already died, and some felt uneasy about the circumstances surrounding her past. From the beginning, death did not seem to be far from Marie-Anne Hood, and her presence in the Gagnon household marked a significant change in the children's lives. On the 6th of December 1917, another tragedy struck the Gagnon family when 2-year-old Joseph was found dead in his bed. It was believed that the child had suffocated. Joseph had not been suffering from any illness at the time, and despite the circumstances surrounding his death, the coroner did not consider it suspicious. Just over a month later, on the 23rd of January 1918, Aurore's mother, who had remained in hospital in Quebec City after being diagnosed with tuberculosis, also died. With her passing, the family lost the person who had cared for the children and managed the household. Only 9 days after his wife's death, Telesphore Gagnon married Marie-Anne Hood. Although people in the village were aware of the difficult and tragic circumstances he had endured, many were surprised that he chose to remarry so soon after his wife's passing. Shortly after the wedding, death would once again present itself in the Gagnon household. Aurore's sister Lucina, who was 6 years old, suddenly died. The cause of her death was unclear, but once again the coroner did not suspect anything out of the ordinary, and no further action was taken. Following Lucina's death, Telesphor's remaining children were sent back to live with their grandparents. For the second time in a short period, the children were removed from the family home, while a pattern of unexplained deaths continued without intervention. In the summer of 1919, the children returned once again to live with their father. At this point, the household consisted of Telesphore Gagnon, his wife Marie-Anne Houde, Aurore, and her surviving brothers and sisters.
Life in the home began to follow a familiar routine. Telesphore continued to leave the house early each morning to go to work and returned late in the evening. During his absence, Marie-Anne Houde took responsibility for the household and for the care of the children. At the time, although education was compulsory in most Canadian provinces, this was not the case in Quebec. Compulsory schooling would not be introduced there until the 1920s, and as a result, school attendance was much lower than in other parts of the country. While Aurore had the opportunity to attend school, her presence in the classroom was very irregular. Teachers questioned why she was so rarely in school. They described her as a bright and intelligent child, yet for reasons that were unclear to them, she only attended classes occasionally. The reason Aurore was kept at home was that she was being regularly beaten by her stepmother. Marie-Anne Houde did not want the child to go outside, as she feared neighbors might see the injuries and begin to talk. She told her husband that Aurore needed to be disciplined, and that the beatings were punishment for not doing as she was told. As time went on, Aurore's injuries began to attract the attention of people outside the household. Eventually, her parents were called to bring her before the local justice of the peace, a man named Aureus Mayer. When Mr. Mayer saw the child, he immediately realized that she appeared to have been treated in a very rough manner. Her feet were cut and badly swollen, and there were clear signs that she had been injured. He questioned both Aurore's father and her stepmother about her condition. Marie-Anne Houde did not deny that she had beaten the child, but she insisted that it had been necessary in order to discipline her when she had not been behaving as she should. The injuries were then explained away. Telesphore and his wife told Mr. Mayer that the wounds on Aurore's feet had been caused by local boys who had thrown stones at her while she had been outside playing. Mr. Mayer later spoke to Aurore on her own. During this conversation, she was very quiet and appeared frightened. She did not say anything that would incriminate either her father or her stepmother. Afterward, Mr. Mayer instructed Telesphore to have his daughter's wounds treated. He also informed the local priest, Father Ferdinand Massey, of his concerns. Both Telesphore and his wife were Catholics who regularly attended church, and Mr. Mayer believed that guidance from Father Massey might help bring an end to the ill treatment. Mr. Mayer also reported his suspicions to the police. However, they told him that they would not be able to take any action unless he made a specific complaint against the child's father and stepmother. Mr. Mayer ultimately decided not to do so. Following the instructions given by the Justice of the Peace, Aurore's father took her to see a doctor named Dr. Lafond so that her injured feet could be treated. Although she received medical attention, her situation did not improve. In September 1919, another injury appeared, this time on Aurore's leg. When Dr. Lafond examined her, he noticed that the wound looked severe and unusual. It appeared as though her leg had been burnt with an object such as a poker. The nature of the injury caused serious concern. Because of the condition of the wound, Dr. Lafond arranged for Aurore to be taken to hospital in Quebec City for further treatment. The injury was so serious that she was required to remain there for an extended period of time. People living in the village were aware of Aurore's hospitalization, and many believed they knew who had inflicted the terrible wound on the defenseless child. By this stage, it was becoming clear to those around her that the injuries were not the result of accidents or isolated incidents. Aurore remained in the hospital for the next 2 months. Her prolonged stay made it evident that the abuse she had suffered was ongoing and severe, rather than the result of a single episode, yet no immediate action was taken to remove her permanently from the household.
By August 1919, more people had begun to see what was happening inside the Gagnon household. During that month, her cousin, Marguerite Lebrec, who was 15 years old at the time, came to stay with the family. While living in the house, Marguerite witnessed Marie-Anne Hood beating Aurore. She later stated that this was not an isolated incident, but something she saw occur on more than one occasion. Then, almost after a year, in January 1920, another member of the family became aware of Aurore's condition. Her maternal aunt, Mrs. Octavie Hemmond, the sister of Aurore's deceased mother, came to visit shortly. During this visit, Mrs. Hemmond saw that Aurore was in a very poor state. Her body was covered in bruises, and it was clear that she had suffered repeated injuries. Mrs. Octavie Hemmond questioned Telesphore Gagnon and his second wife about what she had seen. They told her that Aurore constantly misbehaved and that the punishments she received were necessary. Concerned for the child's health, Mrs. Octavie urged Telesphore to take Aurore to see a doctor. Marie-Anne Hood responded that she did not believe this was required. At around the same time, a neighbor, Mrs. Zilda Lepine, also witnessed the treatment Aurore received. In her home, she had seen Marie-Anne Hood discipline the child harshly and had observed the physical effects of those punishments. By this stage, Aurore's condition had been seen by relatives and neighbors alike. Despite this, no action was taken to remove her from the household, and she remained in the care of the same people. On the 9th of February 1920, Mrs. Azilda Lepine once again had reason to visit her neighbor. When she saw Aurore, she was alarmed by the child's condition. The little girl had cuts and bruises all over her body, and there were sores as well. It was clear from looking at her that she had been badly treated. She was wearing a dirty dress and appeared to have been sleeping on a pallet with straw in the corner of a room. Mrs. Lepine told Marie-Anne Hood that the child needed to be taken to see a doctor. Marie-Anne replied that this would not be necessary and said that she would instead make arrangements to treat the child's wounds herself. 3 days later, on the 12th of February 1920, Marie-Anne Hood was unable to wake her stepdaughter. Not knowing what else to do, she asked Mrs. Lepine for assistance. A doctor, Dr. Lafon, was then called to the house, along with the local priest, Father Ferdinand Massé, and the Justice of Peace, Aureus Maire. When Dr. Lafon examined Aurore, he realized that the long-suffering child was in a deep coma and that there was nothing he could do to help her. A message was sent to Aurore's father, Telesphore Gagnon, who at the time was working in the woods. He returned to the house later that afternoon, and by 7 o'clock that evening, Maria Aurore Lucina Gagnon drew her last breath and died. On Friday, the 13th of February 1920, a post-mortem examination was carried out on the body of Marie Aurore Lucina Gagnon. The examination took place in the local church and was conducted by Dr. Albert Moreau, Dr. Lafond, and the coroner, Dr. William Jolliker. During the examination, it was discovered that the body of Marie Aurore Lucina Gagnon bore approximately 54 wounds, injuries that had been inflicted over a period of time and were not the result of a single incident. These injuries had been inflicted over a period of time and were caused by blunt instruments. There was blood present on her scalp, pus from multiple infections, and her left thigh was badly swollen. The skin on her hands and wrists had been stripped down to the bone. A toxicology examination was also carried out by Dr. Wilfrid Derome, who found that there was poison in the child's body, caused by sepsis. The following day, Saturday, the 14th of February 1920, the funeral of Marie Aurore Lucina Gagnon took place. The service was led by Father Ferdinand Massé, and many people from the local community attended. Telesphore Gagnon stood in the cold, staring at his daughter's grave. In just a few years, he had lost his wife and 3 of his 5 children. Following the funeral, police moved in to make arrests. Marie-Anne Hood and Telesphore Gagnon were taken into custody by Constable Letray, Constable Vezina, and Constable Bouchard. The police then continued their investigation into the death of the child, speaking with neighbors, friends, and Telesphore Gagnon's surviving children. Both Marie-Anne Hood and Telesphore Gagnon were formally charged with murder. On the 16th of February, they appeared before a preliminary hearing and both pleaded not guilty. The judge refused to release them and ordered that they remain in prison while the investigation continued. On the 18th of March, after all the evidence had been presented, it was ordered that the trials should begin in April, and it was decided that the two accused would be tried separately. The trial of Marie Ann Hood was held first and began on the 13th of April 1920. The case was heard in front of Judge Louis-Philippe Pelletier. During the proceedings, the prosecution presented a number of witnesses who testified that they had seen Marie Ann Hood striking the deceased child, many of them on several occasions. The evidence against her was considered strong. The defense did not deny that the abuse had taken place, but instead argued that Hood had acted in this way due to insanity brought on by pregnancy. Doctors agreed that her pregnancies had affected her behavior. Nevertheless, on the 21st of April 1920, Marie Ann Hood was found guilty of murder, and the judge sentenced her to death by hanging, with the execution scheduled for the 1st of October that year. The trial of Aurore Gagnon began 2 days later, on the 23rd of April. Witnesses again told the court how the defendant had beaten his daughter on many occasions. The defense argued that Aurore Gagnon worked very hard, spending most of his days away from the family home, and that he had been manipulated by his wife, who had made false accusations about the child, leading him to punish her. The trial ended on the 29th of April, and Aurore Gagnon was found guilty of manslaughter. On the 4th of May, 1920, he was sentenced to life imprisonment. 3 months later, on the 8th of July, 1920, Marie Ann Hood gave birth to twins while in prison. Around this time, public debate about capital punishment intensified. Reformers, inspired by earlier abolition efforts led by Member of Parliament Robert Bickerdike, campaigned for her sentence to be overturned. Days before her execution, her sentence was commuted to life imprisonment. Although Aurore Gagnon had been sentenced to life in prison, he was released after 5 years for good behavior. He returned to his village, continued working on his farm, and wrote regularly to his wife while she remained incarcerated. Marie Ann Hood later became seriously ill, and in July 1935 she was released after authorities confirmed she had cancer. She went to live with her sister in Montreal and died on the 12th of May 1936. 2 years after her death, Aurore remarried. He died in 1961 at the age of 78. Aurore's older sister, Marie Jean, died in 1986 at the age of 79. The story of Aurore Gagnon and the highly publicized trials of her father and stepmother were reported throughout Quebec. In 1921, a play titled Aurore, the Martyr Child, opened at the Alcazar Theatre in Montreal and continued to be performed there for the next 30 years. Its success led to a film released in 1952, followed by many books and articles written about the case. In 2005, another film was released simply titled Aurore. Aurore Gagnon was not remembered for what she became, but for what she was never allowed to be. She was a child who lived quietly in a small home, endured what she could not escape, and died before her life had the chance to unfold. Her suffering was seen by neighbors, noted by authorities, and explained away time and time again until there was nothing left to ignore. What remained was a child whose name became known only after her death, a family marked by tragedy, and a case that exposed how easily cruelty can persist when it is tolerated. Aurore's life ended under supervision, in plain sight, and that fact, more than any single verdict, is what continues to endure. If you have thoughts about this case, you're welcome to share them in the comments. And if you value careful, forgotten old documentaries like this, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel.